Welcome back to Project 863 and our seasonal recap for Season 1. Unlike the previous season, this one was more about finding out the secrets to what 863 meant and how it related to us. We met some interesting characters along the way, some willing to help us and others trying to shut us down at every turn. Day 988.
I got a really curious email like an hour ago.
Someone reached out to us via email that claimed to be an undercover officer.
Is this like a police officer or a detective?
One that knew of Syntech and had been watching our content for a while now.
What if this is just a fan? I'm not gonna get my hopes up. I'm trying not to get high anxiety right now.
After we verified his legitimacy, we started asking him questions. Questions about the Mountaineer, the liquid that burned through our flooring, and even Cyphus.
How did this person have information that no one else had?
And while it seemed like a one-way street of information, I'm not on anyone's side. I'm trying to find answers too. But why us? Why? We did learn a few very important facts. One, the building the studio existed in was originally one huge laboratory for Syntech. And two, other people were on this ride with us. And we very well may have found a potential ally to help us in this black hole he affectionately called 863.
Coming back around are like two very clear things to me. 863 and Cyphus.
And our new ally cautioned us to unplug that computer under the stairs as soon as possible. The very next day, day 989, was a long one, and it started out in the worst possible way. When Woods and I went to Red Base Warehouse to unplug that LAPD case under the stairs, it became clear that whatever madman put it there had a contingency plan for such an event.
Oh my gosh. What is that?
I just got chills. I recognize that.
After cutting the power to the case, a very ominous beeping sounded from inside. Once we peeled through the technology, we found another vial of the corrosive liquid hooked up to a timer.
So what do we...
The issue is we leave this here, and even if this just internally implodes, this sets this whole thing on fire.
And it suddenly became clear to us what it was meant to do. Using the time left we had as a guide, we quickly came to the decision to remove as much of the tech inside as we could so it wouldn't get damaged, and leave the case to melt away outside.
Here we go, this is it. 10, 9, 8.
And melt it did, right through the asphalt of the parking lot. But it didn't seem to help our troubles of being unable to call the police, as our calls still weren't going through, leading us to theorize multiple of these devices must exist inside the entire building.
There are more of those. And they might not even be in our units.
And so, after taking some time to report it to the police in person,
I tried to explain everything. I sent them pictures and I showed them footage and things like that, and so they were a little bit more like, oh, okay.
Woods and I went back to the stairs to check and see if we were able to get a better look with the case gone, but decided to use the endoscope from the vault that was shipped to us instead, hoping for a better visual. Once we managed to stick it through some of the larger cracks, we were presented with some odd findings, such as hanging cloth and an old thermos. Determined to get under the stairs, we searched for a way in.
That's not the same thing up here. Like, if we pop this guy out, there's not a board right there.
But ultimately decided the only way was to rip the stairs apart. And that's when we found it, a trapdoor at the very top of the stairs.
Oh no. This is it, dude. This is how we did it.
After spotting the ladder, we both resolved to enter the creepy area together and see if it had any answers to the existential feelings that we were experiencing. After safely lowering ourselves down, we were presented with many scientific objects, including beakers, a microscope, vials of unnamed liquids, among other things. But what intrigued me the most was the large desk at the very front, positioned right under the stairs, and on it, an Apple II computer, covered in dust. Suddenly, the purpose of the emulator that had been mailed to us was as clear as day.
The fans figured out what it was for. It's a floppy disk emulator. That thing is supposed to connect to that Apple II to emulate a floppy disk.
I excitedly rushed to the vault to grab the emulator, not willing to ignore the gut feeling that it was sent to us to connect to this specific Apple II that it had just uncovered. After taking the time to examine it and put it together, it was back into the disgusting space under the stairs to connect it to the computer and to see if my hunch was correct. As I was looking it over, another reminder of Syntech was printed on it, adding more fuel to the fire concerning our previous neighbors. Then it was the moment of truth. None of this mattered if the computer itself didn't even turn on, and to my relief, it did. After a few moments of fumbling to figure out how to connect the emulator properly, the deed was done. And it was a perfect match, and once she turned back on again, the prompt was that of a username. There was only one I could try, and hopefully it would work. After plugging in the Cyphus 591 that we found on the paper in the car, as well as the long password, I was in. All that was left next was to figure out a directory ID, and for that, I needed the audience.
I'm so frustrated. I feel like I keep getting so close. And then, nope.
As we were exiting the space, we got a better look at the cracked mug, putting a face to the old company that was once in the building before us. As we retreated to Megadesk, the day finally seemed to be catching up to us as fatigue started setting in.
This is vodka.
But that sliver of relief was still there. The relief that we were finally starting to get some answers.
Feel good. I feel like I'm finally getting some answers, bro.
And so, it was time to loop the audience in. We found what the username Cyphus590 goes to, we got access, and now it is asking input directory ID. Any ideas? Honestly, no idea, but I'm a little impatient to finally understand. Help. What is the directory ID? And they were extremely helpful in giving us ideas on what the directory ID could be. Pegasus, which was one of the keywords from the building schematic in the Mountaineer, being the most popular answer. With this knowledge in mind, we headed back to the Apple II, and wouldn't you know,
Pegasus. All right.
Sure.
You ready?
Pegasus worked. But what we found next was shocking. A list of different documents was presented to us, and we decided to go through them in order. The first was a list of patients, one that we quickly realized were more than likely involved in human trials. Horrifyingly disturbing information like mentions of amputation and death were written on the doctor's report. The second file appeared to be a chat log between a B-27 and a familiar name, D. It started off with what seemed to be a secret code, more than likely the project the two were talking about. And while all this talk of patients suffering side effects and project deadlines being met were odd, a name stood out to us more than anything. It was our first introduction to Nelson, and the first confirmed name that we had come across. The third file was between GR and once again D, with a very familiar code between the two of them. The conditions with the patients seemed even worse than the previous chat log, but where B-27 seemed very non-aggressive about the troubling experiments, GR didn't seem to care, and even worse, seemed to try and push D to pursue these non-humane practices even further.
We can provide more participants if the current ones aren't useful. What does that mean?
But something that seemed to provide a little bit of relief was that D seemed to have a conscience. So whomever we were dealing with directly wasn't as horrible as they could have been. But next, we needed to try and open the unknown files that remained and see if they could provide us more answers. 11 days went by, but on day 1000, the undercover officer known as John Doe reached out to us once again.
John Doe emailed again, so I figured, well, let's see what it's about.
This time with an email that seemed stranger than the first.
Hello again, the drop is waiting for your. I have personally delivered it myself. Please keep in mind that the clock IE now ticking, and if someone is indeed watching me, or you, there's misspellings all over the place.
One that was filled with misspellings. I had a sneaking suspicion that this might have been a young fan, but didn't disregard the email right away. After reading through it, we were presented with a line of emotes at the bottom, ones that we quickly decoded to reveal a set of coordinates in the valley.
Is that longitude and latitude?
This is so unsettling.
One to a creepy canyon that looked abandoned. After deciding to trust the legitimacy, I headed off to the drop location as quickly as possible, heeding the warning John Doe had left. Once we arrived at the location, it looked even more abandoned than the picture had offered, leaving us with an uneasy feeling.
Let's see if we can find it quick.
As we continued to hunt around for whatever the officer had left us, the creepy feeling just continued to get thicker and thicker as we took each step. Finally, however, we located what looked like a man-made cave, filled with rat droppings and cobwebs.
I think we found our drop.
Stop, really?
Dude, I didn't even look you right at that. I did not even see it.
It's pitch black in
It's
here.
so dark. I can't even.
Inside was a briefcase, new looking. This had to be what he wanted us to find.
And look at that. Lo and behold, combinations. 2 different combinations.
All there was to do was to figure out the codes to open up the locks. As we drove back to the studio, we theorized about the email that John Doe had sent.
It's within like the
email?
widgets, yeah.
Why send us a case without sending us a code?
The odd nature of it was still not sitting right with me. Once we got back to the studio, however, we continued the lead we currently had and looked over the email once again.
Use coordinates. Pretty clear, use coordinates.
I proceeded to decrypt the misspellings and found a secret message within. Use the coordinates. After plugging those numbers in, the case was opened. And what we found inside provided more clarity than anything else we had found thus far. First, a key, and a very familiar one at that. One with a blue tag that read 346, and it looked exactly like the one that we had upstairs in the red safe. Second, a broken watch, one that was locked into the time 863. Third, a charred-looking handkerchief with the initials NS sewn into it. And finally, perhaps the most telling, a scanned newspaper clipping. In it, we learned Cephas's first name was in fact Nelson, and that he was a beloved member of the biotech company. We also learned that along with an unnamed partner, he had created Syntech, and that he was passionate about what the company was achieving, albeit seemingly ignoring the horrible, inhumane conditions we were reading about. This was a different feeling, one that settled among all of us. We finally seemed to have a shred of clarity concerning who Cephas was, but it only proceeded to open up more questions. But like a speeding train cutting us off, John Doe left a request for us to make a drop of our own with evidence that we'd found around the studio. That was something that, at the moment, I couldn't do. I needed more information before I could proceed. More than a week later, on day 1010, we decided to run the D3B.disc on the Apple II, hoping it would indeed provide more information into our investigations into Syntech. It was one of the few leads we had left to look into. However, we needed to prepare the space for all of us to look at the Apple II first. After sawing a hole through the side of the stairs,
Here's Matthias!
making places for everyone to sit, and setting up a video recording software so it could be easier for the audience to watch, the SD card was inserted into the emulator and we were back in business. After running the D3B.disc, the command prompt needed was the only thing to appear on screen. As we went through it with trial and error, it seemed to be a kind of database the computer was pulling from. One thing it immediately confirmed for us was that Nelson Cephas was indeed a part of this. And not only that, but he was a threat. It also confirmed the existence of something called life's blood, which we connected to the serum immediately. But perhaps one of the more important facts that we learned was the quantity of the serum that still existed, 6,200 milliliters. Of course, this would become important later on, as we continued scraping through question after question to get as much information as we possibly could. We were faced with the first indication of something concerning. The computer informed us that there was nothing after the date March 5th. Why nothing existed beyond was confusing, but it paled in comparison to the aggravation and discomfort of the computer telling us we were chosen. It was so unbearably frustrating, I needed a break. A week later, on day 1017, everything seemed to get far too real for us. We decided to look through the desk that was holding up the Apple II, hoping for some more clues and evidence into any of the numerous leads we had opened so far. We immediately took the advice from Reddit to open the drawer with the key that had been hanging in the previous video, and found a petri dish and vial samples, completely unrecognizable to us.
That does not look good.
Was that blood?
It doesn't look like it. Look. Pitch black.
However, in the first drawer on the right, we discovered the very odd-looking Geiger counter. It definitely looked like it had been used, and that in and of itself was concerning.
This is just something used to measure radiation?
Yes, it's used to measure radiation. That is accurate. Inside, a note was left, one that read, "Reach the rate." Determined to see if we could use the counter inside the studio, we started scanning as many points as we could, eagerly waiting for any click. When we reached Blue Base, it became obvious what we were supposed to be looking for. Numerous clicks were resonating from the walls in the hallway, but it still seemed inconsistent. We even found a sizably warm spot with the endoscope where the clicks were sounding. With all of this in mind,
That's significant. There's something in the wall.
Whoa!
Bro.
Woods got to work carving into the wall. What we found was a small briefcase of the same serum.
That's a lot.
This time in blue bottles. As to how long it had been in the walls was unclear, but what was clear was that this was the first part of the 6,200 milliliters that Apple II had spoken of. Now, it just became the question of what to do with it. As we re-entered the room under the stairs, we took in our surroundings and made a note of all the little details that we had missed before honing our attention on the desk. We also discovered some floppy disks, offering an interesting blast from the past. Then, it was back to the right side, and the drawer under the one that contained the Geiger counter was not disappointing. Numerous files, all listing different kinds of tests with different results and different patients are what followed, all signed by the familiar D. Phrases like splintered were not familiar to me. And then, it happened. we suddenly started coming across suspicious documents that seemed out of this place.
The admissions committee has carefully reviewed your application to the Claremont McKenna College, and unfortunately, after much consideration, regret to inform you that we cannot offer you a place at the blank.
But distantly related to all three of us, a college rejection letter from a school Woods had applied to.
That's kind of like exactly what I got.
Doesn't this feel a little too serendipitous?
A letter of downsizing to a store manager with the name, the same one that I'd previously worked under.
That was my previous boss.
And perhaps the most concerning, a newspaper article written about Samantha, as well as a letter from a talent agency she had once worked with.
This is literally from the very first talent agency that I met with out here.
Even stranger still, a person of interest form with her birthday on it that was signed 2 years before she was even born.
Date of birth, July 11th, 1999.
Clearly, something was going on here, but we had seen enough, and we quit searching for now to clear out our heads. Something like this, it really rocks your world.
It's another thing entirely to have it connected to us.
In order to get some kind of opinion other than what was circling between the three of us, we retreated to the old theater room in Red Base to go through Reddit and see what our audience was saying.
All the patient IDs start with 863. Oh wait, wow. 863.
To see if there was anything else that we had missed, we went through dozens of interesting theories. Many of them we were storing away for later use. But one that really stuck out to us was the comparison between the two logos, where we had seen the Syntec clover and the snakes on the vials.
This was on the vial,
Yeah.
but this wasn't.
They seemed to fit together perfectly. Day 1023.
The phone that was in the LAPD case started vibrating in the vault.
Day 1023 was the very first day that we were contacted by Nelson Cephas himself, or whom we thought it was at the time.
I want to know why.
4 messages are what popped up as I opened up the phone, all pressing us to answer immediately.
About 20 minutes ago. Answer immediately. I know you still have this phone, answer immediately. I have some information for you if you answer soon. We're all on the same page here regardless of if our goals are different. If we respond, we can get them to stop assaulting us.
The person on the other end of the phone seemed to be trying to reach an understanding with us, offering up information we were craving in exchange for evidence that we had gathered.
An exchange between sides. If you give me something that I want, I can give you something that you want.
It was also very clear that whomever this was unstable, as they kept teetering back and forth between calm and polite and aggressive and threatening, sometimes within the same set of text messages. However, no trust had been established between us, and I wasn't going to give up something as valuable as the emulator just because I was threatened.
I could destroy your business in an instant if I chose. I'm attempting to find common ground.
But I was desperate to learn why all this madness was connected to us, so much so that I struck a deal between us and this mysterious person.
The vials, the evidence, and the emulator in exchange for information on why we're connected to all this.
And it seemed promising, especially when they claimed to know about Project 863.
If that's all you want to know, I can tell you.
However, in a surprisingly unexpected gesture of goodwill, one that they claimed was to prove that they just wanted their property returned, they offered us a gift, one that they had left in a sprinkler box outside the building, tacking on a warning to not trust D as a final message. As we went to investigate, we indeed found a small box inside one of the sprinkler boxes.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
The very next day, day 1024, we opened up the present that our mysterious texter had left for us, finding the second key to the Mountaineer.
It's to a Mercury Mountaineer.
While that did seem to line up with their plea for a peaceful transaction between evidence and information, we still needed to look for something that they'd wanted us to investigate and report back.
Check the tape. He's giving us clues now?
And the small note on the box saying, "Check the tape," seemed to be our only clue.
Well, if we go in here and this works, what does that mean?
We went back to the Mountaineer and searched around for this mysterious tape.
It fits.
I feel like this wouldn't be too hard to find considering he wants us to find it.
The only thing I can think of doing is start taking the car apart.
Finally finding it hidden inside a closed-off compartment. It was old and dusty, but it didn't stop our enthusiasm for listening to what was on it. Luckily, Woods had a tape player that we could use for such an endeavor. After a quick trip to his house, we started the tape and took a listen.
Nothing on it?
I don't hear anything.
I hear static.
Whoa.
What was that, bro?
It was hard to make much out, but we theorized that it seemed to be a laboratory. But that's when it got disturbing. People were pleading to leave.
Wait, what did they say?
I want to go home.
Was that what that said?
Whatever had been caught on this tape, we weren't sure, and it just left us even more confused. Why would we need to listen to something like this?
He said, the truth is the truth no matter who it comes from. So what is he trying to assert is truth in this?
What clues could it possibly hold? Once we got back into the studio, we asked Mike Badal to look over the tape and see if there were any secrets on it he could pull from it.
I found the tape in the Mountaineer.
I wasn't ready to believe this was a dead end, and we waited. We headed back up to Megadesk to indulge some more Reddit charm, looking over some of the memes and theories from our supportive community. If anything, it was a good reminder that we weren't alone in all of this. Mike finally was able to work his magic, and so Samantha and I headed over to the studio to see what he found.
Dude, first of all, there's like straight up torture happening on there.
Yeah.
It's
But
It's bad.
But did you guys notice there's like a conversation happening in the background?
I mean, I heard talking.
Yeah, we could hear like some words here and there, but
Screaming.
No, the only reason why I called you guys over was because I heard literally the word Nelson. It sounds concerned.
Apparently there was a secret conversation that he had managed to pull out of the background noise of the original ambiance, one between a man and a woman. The conversation itself seemed hostile, with both of them arguing back and forth about stopping the human trials and talking to Cyphus, but it was clear that the man that was speaking didn't quite trust his female companion. It became even more alarming when she started talking about what appeared to be a plot to get rid of Nelson.
I can't. Dude, this is a full-on plot.
But it was at the end of the conversation that immediately got my full attention. The man addressed the woman as D.
Wait, what?
I think we both heard what we just heard.
That was the name we knew very well.
The question is, where do we go from here?
Regardless, we wanted to confirm some information with John Doe about the evidence that he had left for us. As we spoke, he revealed that there was a fire at Syntec in which 7 people perished, including employees at the company. However, no one was charged or responsible for it. And while he did confirm some information about the evidence in question, it seemed like he was as much in the dark as we were, especially when we probed about the documents we found under the stairs, and he wasn't ready to share his theory with us yet. But he did confirm that 863 was a project of Deb's, and that he knew her, personally. But then he asked for something strange, the emulator, making it the second time that someone was requesting that from us, and it made me suspicious. But I couldn't keep stalling, leaving this drop, and I ended the chat with a plea for a little bit more time to investigate, but I felt like I was running out of time. Day 1031 started with another text from whom we assumed was Nelson at the time, impatient that we hadn't set up the details of the exchange yet.
I'm getting impatient. Have you all found what I instructed you to find? Obviously we found it. Why would we even lie about that? He did give us a lead.
I'm always a man of my word, and so I provided to him the information he had asked for concerning the tape, paying specific attention to the conversation that we had overheard. I needed to know who Dee really was, why she was so aggressively, and why we were seemingly caught up in her little games at the same time. Nelson revealed that Dee, or Deborah, was the talented head clinical scientist at Syntec, the one that oversaw all of the trials we had been hearing about. But it was clear that she didn't like him and actively avoided him while she was there. We realized it must have been Nelson's partner that had been speaking to her, trying to calm her down. But then the conversation took a different route, and Nelson seemed to be all too happy to talk about Deborah, claiming that she was the mass manipulator and that she was pulling the wool over everyone's eyes, including ours. But that's when he dropped a bombshell.
D3B is Deb, not some AI, not a fortune teller. That is Deborah.
That was her we were talking to. We were shocked, but I needed to ask the computer myself and confirm it personally before I could agree to my exchange with Nelson.
I am going to address it as if Nelson Cyphus is right, as if he's right in saying that D3B, the program that we ran, I'm gonna assume that he's right and that this is not a database, this is not AI, and that is Deb somehow contacting us.
At first, the computer seemed to be following the same script as before, displaying invalid prompts to every probe we tried to get her to respond to. It was getting ridiculous. We were all tired of playing games we didn't know the rules to. However, once the computer had initiated its conversation protocol, everything seemed to change. She admitted that she only took on the guise of a computer because she believed it would have been a tactic that we would have responded best to. But I wasn't satisfied. I needed a confirmation that this was Deb that we were talking to, and thankfully, she provided it. But this still wasn't sitting right with me. Cyphus had been far more open with information than she had. Was he right that she wasn't to be trusted? And while we were asking us to believe her, she wasn't privy to any of the information about Project 863 or why March 5th was an absolute date she couldn't see past. But that wasn't at all what I was curious about. I wanted to know more about the conversation she had that was on the tape. And in that, we learned the name of Cyphus's partner, Wesley. But she stood firm that Nelson was at fault and that he was manipulating us, not her. Even then, when she was at Syntech, she stubbornly stuck to the fact that she was just doing it for the good of the company. At the end, she cautioned that we needed to give the emulator to John Doe.
Obviously, a lot of people want this emulator, but Dee sent it to us
in order to keep it safe. And so, I decided that we needed to take action and leave him a drop. Not with the emulator, but some evidence that he could possibly use for his investigation.
You see this? This is just a scan, this isn't a real document.
Yeah.
Right?
So we can just take pictures
That's what I'm saying.
of stuff before handing it off.
Yeah, exactly. And we could just hand off. How about the tape? It's legit, it's real.
At this point, it was all we could do. We decided to stake out near the drop location. Once we were packed up, we jumped in the car and headed out to the location.
TBH, I think we should just park normally downstairs and have him also come downstairs.
A rather empty parking garage in town. Once we parked, we spotted a set of stairs near the corner exit. This seemed perfect for someone to make a quick pickup, and then it was just a waiting game. We had to be quiet once he came, but we managed to get his retrieving of the package on camera at a safe distance.
Sam, are you saying anything? Yeah. Right. Is it? Are you serious?
I don't want to stand out too much.
We had done it. We had left the drop, but I was left wondering if we had made any progress from something like this. However, it was clear that I was being too hasty, as John Doe left an email as we were driving back to the studio with a new directory ID for the Apple II and a subtle warning that he was still expecting the emulator. Day 1038. After a short break, we finally resolved to try the new directory ID on day 1038. But before that, we took the advice of Reddit to check out what appeared to be a Syntech website. .net. Not sure if anyone's posted this yet, but I found this website. Wait, the actual website? The website was registered in 1986? Not knowing yet if it was legit or not, it didn't take long to realize that it was the former of the two, and we eagerly looked over it to see if there were any clues. And while we did confirm the last name for Wesley, started by Nelson Cyphus, and his partner Wesley Nathaniel. Yeah, so Wesley Nathaniel, new last name, Wesley Nathaniel. We made a chilling discovery that there were multiple Syntech locations, domestically and internationally. With all the leads about the website exhausted for the moment.
Nothing looked oddly special about that website, just looked like a biotechnology,
It was too
pharmaceutical. Maybe.
It was a very
for everything that we
website,
witnessed.
Yeah.
We headed back to the Apple II to plug in the Gaius directory ID that John Doe had given us.
Okay.
Listing files, chat log. We have a new chat log. We have a project.
The first file was a chat log, and this time between Wes and Cyphus. In it, the former seemed to be expressing concern to his partner over experiment conditions and supposed government contracts. The two very much seemed at odds, especially when it came to Deborah. The tension was incredibly palpable. The second was a project form, one that had to do with an experiment that would protect someone from the effects of radiation poisoning. An interesting fact that we noted was that both Cyphus and Deb worked on it together. Third was an email, one from Nelson Cyphus to a representative of the NSA asking for more funding to expand the company into more locations. And the last one was another chat log, once again between B27 and D, and it stood out as the strangest of them all. And in it, D was acting differently and asking for chemicals from B27 to euthanize someone. Who? We weren't sure, but it seemed to push the theory that Deb was trying to get rid of Cyphus, possibly forever. On day 1044, the day before the absolute date of March 5th, Nelson Cyphus once again texted us, aggressively trying to push us to make a decision on the deal that he had offered. Dodging as much of his mockery as we could, we tried to circumvent some of the information out of him without having to confirm we would have to give up what we wanted, but to no avail. He seemed happy enough to continue to paint Deborah as the bad guy that was using Project 863 to stop him. All the while, she continued to lie to us and manipulate the events that occurred that brought us all together in the first place to Hi-Fi Studios. And while Deb wasn't someone I trusted 100%, something wasn't adding up on Nelson's side either. Something darker seemed to be hiding behind his words. At the end, we turned down his deal, and he threatened to take the matter into his own hands if we didn't give him the serum he needed, even threatening to incriminate us to the police. Time was running out now, and there was only one other person we could reach out to, Deborah. Starting up the Apple II once again, for what would have been the very last time, we pleaded to Deb to help us. We didn't know what to expect March 5th, and we didn't know how to prepare for it. Unfortunately, Deb seemed content in allowing things to proceed as they needed to, but she seemed hopeful and determined, and that was all we could lean on at the moment. After telling us, once again, to part with the emulator, we readied ourselves. After all, like she said, Nelson was coming. So we readied ourselves with weapons, cameras, and staked out a spot in Red Base warehouse that we could stay in for the absolute day. After that, all we could do was wait. Day 1045. And so it had come, March 5th. The three of us were waiting at 1 a.m., alone and in the dark, not knowing what to expect from this date, but hoping that it would work out, just as Deb said.
Is this the end in a good way? Like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and I have a feeling this is not gonna be good.
But of course, it wouldn't be that easy for us. I received a notification of movement inside Blue Base.
No, it's 1 in the...
1:06 a.m. It's 1:06 a.m.
Okay, let's just think for a moment. Like,
before
what?
we freak out.
And so we headed over there to investigate.
Upstairs.
As we headed upstairs, we spotted the vault door was open and headed into it to see if something had been taken.
How is the vault open? How on earth is the... Where's the serum?
vials?
Where's
The serum? Is that the only thing that's missing?
And after seeing that the serum was indeed missing, the door swung closed behind us and locked, effectively trapping us inside. We had left the Apple II completely vulnerable for an attack, and we were helpless to stop it.
Matt, what is going on?
What? How is that possible?
As frustrating as it was, we resolved to wait until 6 a.m. when people came to work to let us out for their safety and ours. I knew the police wouldn't come and help, and I wasn't going to put anyone at risk. However, in a stroke of good luck, we remembered the drywall had been patched over the window and kicked a hole through it to escape. As we carefully made our way back into Red Base, I retrieved the untouched emulator from my bag on the second floor. However, the Apple II wasn't so lucky.
He absolutely destroyed it. He came through here and destroyed the Apple II.
Nelson did get exactly what he wanted, the serum we had collected, and a way to sever our ties with Deb. It felt hopeless. All we could do was to check the cameras to see if any of the footage would be useful to us, and it was. Nelson had entered through the vault, more specifically through the ceiling, as we discovered later. He hid in the old Doper Nope office to wait for us as he locked us inside and destroyed the lock so we wouldn't be able to get out.
He destroys the internal mechanism of that thing. He takes off the keypad, destroys the internal mechanism. What is that he has?
And finally, he broke through the door of the space under the stairs.
Gosh!
After coming up empty,
He's
looking for the emulator, a very chilling reminder of Strike 2 was said as he proceeded to beat the Apple II to pieces before finally leaving. And that was that. Nothing we could have done to change those events, but at least it provided some clarity as to what happened when we were trapped.
I don't even know how to process that. This just got so much more real.
In an effort to cool down from what we had just witnessed, we headed over to Reddit to alert the audience that we were indeed okay, but also to see if they had found anything that might be useful to us from the past few videos. And, as usual, they pulled through big time. A few users had found a back-end site, one stemming from the original Syntech one.
What was that? What? Wait,
is this what that other post was talking about? What did they do? How did they make that happen?
However, the server appeared to be offline.
No, look, error 404. This site is disconnected.
After that, we looked into the B side of the tape, relieved that Mike had actually processed that as well. And on it, was another conversation between Dee and Wesley, but this one seemed to be much more hopeful, especially on the end of Syntech's resident scientist. She expressed how the 863 subjects were far beyond what she could have expected, and that it would help her save Wes.
The 863 subjects, they're different. Far beyond what I could have expected. It'll be tight, but I think we finally found our way out of this.
It put into perspective how much faith she really had put into us, even at the wake of her destruction. And so, we decided to trust her and put forth the plan to give the emulator to John Doe. After giving ourselves the weekend to calm down and to make a plan, we decided to act on day 1048. We are going to give all of the evidence over to the undercover officer for safekeeping. I was tired of being passive and letting Nelson Cyphus walk all over me.
He said, Nelson? This is the same person it's always been.
Or who I thought was Nelson Cyphus.
Who have we been talking to?
It suddenly became apparent that it wasn't Nelson, and that realization in and of itself made my blood turn cold.
We need to make a plan to get this to the undercover officer as soon as possible.
But it didn't change anything, and we still made it clear that we were going to do what was right no matter what. So we packed up all the evidence, including the emulator, and devised a plan.
We're going to drop off the evidence. Are you comfortable with going with us to do that? Probably.
Samantha and Bailey and I took the case and headed out for the drop location. Although it didn't take very long to realize that we were being followed by a masked figure in a silver Dodge Journey.
If this guy follows me, can you get an image?
Yes, he's following us.
Oh, he's got a hood on.
He's following us. Okay.
Okay.
I did my very best to try and lose him without burning the location of the drop.
Are you kidding me?
Way too close.
Are you kidding me? What is the point of this?
I don't know what is supposed to happen here.
We ended up trapped at the end of the road.
Oh my.
What do we do?
This is the end. This is literally the end of the road.
What are we supposed to do? He's literally pulling up right behind us, Matt.
What do you want me to do? Do you want me to get out?
No.
What am I supposed to do?
I don't know. He's literally just sitting there. I don't know what to do. Oh my God.
With no choice, all I could do was offer up the case.
Here you go. It's all right here.
The empty case.
What now?
We had purposely led him on a wild goose chase to give Woods enough time to pack up the real case of evidence inside the Mountaineer, drive to the drop location, and meet John Doe safely. And in return, a case was given to him, specifically from Deb herself.
What is this?
From Deb.
From Deb?
The next day, on day 1049, we all gathered to open up the case. After figuring out how to open it, we discovered that it was holding a small wooden box with an 863 insignia carved into it, and inside that, 3 rings, with the same insignia and our initials on them. They all fit us perfectly. The implication of why she had sent this to us was unclear at the moment, but as we dug further into the box, we found another note that said, "Follow the wire."
Follow the wire.
Which one?
What?
This isn't done.
This wasn't close to being done, and so we started checking the wires in Red Base warehouse, specifically behind where the Apple II had been. After seeing that one particular wire was leading up to the roof, we decided to investigate, strapping the cameras in for a perilous journey up to the roof. Something caught our eye immediately: a large antenna. As we moved closer, the same 863 insignia was littered all over it. It became apparent that this was what had been connecting us to Deb.
Is this how we're communicating with Deb?
And the fact that it was still moving meant there might have been more for us to find. And so, back under the stairs, we followed another wire through the ceiling that led to, wouldn't you know, under the stairs in Red Base.
It's the stairs. It's the stairs.
After breaking down another wall, we were faced with a very large and very functioning server rack. It became clear this was more than likely the downed server from the Syntech website, and now that we had the ability to plug it in and bring it online, we might be able to get into the back end of the site properly.
We have to bring this online.
How?
Deb wants us to.
How do you know it's
Is that what it is?
Deb wants us to bring this online.
After setting it up, we headed back into Megadesk and once again plugged in the Cyphus590 username and password, and we got in.
We're in.
What awaited us was a completely different site, including documents from the Apple II that we had seen from the 2 directories. However, it became very clear that we weren't the only ones in the account, and document after document started disappearing from site. Thinking quickly, I managed to create my own admin account and delete his. All that was left was the confirmed subject report, the one that we were never able to open on the Apple II when we originally saw it. And as we opened it up, our world once again seemed to come crashing down. 4 separate reports, one that we weren't able to open, were found. One for each of us, with personal information, including fingerprints. We were confirmed, but it seemed to back up the growing suspicion that this was something that had been following us around for a long time. And then we found it, an option to run the emulation. After running the D3B.disk I copied from the SD card before giving it to John Doe, we were once again connected to Deb. She gave us some much needed answers, ones that we were looking for. And it finally became clear to us how we were connected to 863. And that's when I realized who Subject 4 was. You.
It's you.
All of you watching. You all had played an extremely important role in Project 863, but our job wasn't over. Nelson was using other people, deemed his phantoms, to do his dirty work, and we had to stop them. She wanted us to find the serum and the formula before they found it, or else people beyond the studio, beyond Syntech, might be in danger. And so, we all agreed. We were in too deep now, and we were clearly connected beyond our control.
Seems like we're in this too deep now.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm in. Are you?
And that's a recap of Season 1. If you're still trying to get caught up, check out this recap to Season 2. Until then, be curious.